Hello MotoGP fans. Welcome back to ZNGP Today. Just weeks before the first official MotoGP test of 2026, Marc Márquez was back on track, and back in the spotlight. The Ducati rider suffered a crash today during a private training session at Valencia's Aspar circuit. The good news, no serious consequences. The context, however, tells a much bigger story as Márquez prepares for a season where nothing is guaranteed. Jorge Martín's winter recovery has been bumpy, and now Motosan reports he's returned to the operating table. Missing the Sepang shakedown would be a big blow for any rider, doubly so for Martín after a 2025 strewn with injuries. We break the situation to explain what this means for his rehab, Aprilia's prep and Martín's 2026 prospects. At Ducati's GP26 launch, Dall'Igna dropped a key reminder about the rulebook. Even with an engine freeze in place, there remain development avenues that manufacturers can exploit. That nuance matters because rivals have closed the gap, and every small freedom can translate into tenths on the lap time board. We unpack what Ducati can still do, how they'll try to do it, and what it means for the start of MotoGP 2026. Don't forget to click subscribe button and the bell icon for MotoGP news update. The headline is simple and reassuring. Marc Márquez went down during a training session at the Aspar circuit, but walked away without injury. No fractures, no complications, and no interruption to his recovery plan. Ducati sources quickly played down concerns, stressing that this was part of a normal training routine as Márquez builds rhythm ahead of the Sepang tests. For a rider known for pushing limits even in practice, the incident is seen as a reminder, not a warning sign. Beyond the fall itself, the timing is symbolic. Márquez has returned to consistent training with the same hunger that defined his prime. After 5 seasons disrupted by injuries, surgeries and doubts, 2025 marked his full resurrection, capped by another world title. For many inside the paddock, this feels less like a comeback and more like a continuation of a career that injuries temporarily interrupted. The confidence is back, the body is responding, and the motivation is unmistakable. Márquez himself has been clear: 2026 will not be easier. The grid is stronger, manufacturers have closed gaps, and regulations continue to compress performance margins. Ducati remains the reference, but rivals are closer than ever. For Márquez, that reality is fuel. The competitive pressure is no longer something to escape, it's something to embrace. Each training session, including today's, is part of sharpening himself for a season where margins will be microscopic. The level is getting higher every year. Quote from Márquez's recent outlook on competition. That pressure is not a burden, it's motivation. Off the track, Márquez's importance to Ducati has never been clearer. Dall'Igna has openly stated that renewing Marc Márquez is the factory's #1 objective. The plan is to secure his future before the season even begins, a move that underlines how central he is to Ducati's long-term vision. While contract details remain unresolved, the intent is unmistakable. Ducati wants Márquez leading its next chapter, just as he led its most recent triumph. The crash at Valencia does not change the real target, Sepang. Márquez is expected to continue his recovery uninterrupted and arrive in Malaysia at full strength, where he will ride the GP26 for the first time in official testing. That will be the true benchmark, the moment where preparation gives way to performance. Thailand, on February 27th, is the season's first exam. Today's fall is already part of the past. A crash, no consequences, and no change of plan. Marc Márquez continues exactly where he wants to be, on a bike, building toward another season where pressure, expectation and ambition collide. Sepang is next, the GP26 awaits, and the pursuit of a 10th world title rolls on. The timeline has turned fragile. Martín already arrived at the end of 2025 carrying multiple wounds. a fractured scaphoid in his left hand and a broken right clavicle suffered in Motegi, and the team opted for surgical fixes in recent weeks. That sequence of operations is intended to correct lingering structural damage, but it also restarts the clock on rehabilitation. Every operation buys structural certainty at the cost of short-term riding time. For a rider who needs track minutes to refine confidence, that trade-off is harsh. In plain terms, this is not a marginal checkup, it's a potential derailment of the carefully planned winter road back to full fitness. Surgical treatment of the scaphoid and clavicle are routine in MotoGP, but neither is trivial for steering, braking or handling high G loads. Both injuries directly affect the fine motor control and upper body strength a rider needs to manage a modern MotoGP machine. Recovery timelines can vary depending on individual healing and rehab quality. Rushed returns risk re-injury or persistent weakness. Aprilia and Martin's physio team must now balance pushing the timetable and protecting long-term function, a classic short-term versus long-term performance dilemma. Missing Sepang is not just a lost test day, it's fewer baseline laps, less seat time and a compressed learning curve before the first race. Winter testing is the circuit where hardware meets rider feel. For a team like Aprilia, evolving the RSGP and integrating developments for 2026, the absence of a primary rider during Sepang forces choices. Use test riders for setup data, run different control programs for the available riders, or accept unknowns when the season begins. From Martin's viewpoint, missing the shakedown means weaker feedback on ergonomics, throttle mapping and tire behavior. From Aprilia's viewpoint, it means less direct input to optimize the bike around one of its most talented qualifiers. The gap isn't just days on a calendar, it's lost opportunities to turn preseason hypotheses into race-ready setups. Martin's career to date is a study in resilience, yet repeated injuries carve stress into confidence and season plans. The psychological work is as important as physical rehab, rebuilding trust in the body, relearning to lean into braking zones and re-establishing race pace instincts. Aprilia will need to protect him from pressure to rush and craft a phased return that prioritizes seat time when he's fully ready. If all goes well, the surgery could be the reset that finally delivers durable health. If it doesn't, the early rounds could feel like chasing rather than fighting. The operations are painful but purposeful, aimed at enabling the comeback Martin and Aprilia both want. Jorge Martin's winter has become a critical risk management exercise. Surgery may be the necessary fix, but it creates immediate sporting costs, a likely absence from Sepang, a compressed testing program and a tougher path to race fitness. The good news is the intent: restore structural integrity so Martin can return stronger. But the timetable is uncertain. In the coming days, expect official updates from Aprilia on his availability for Sepang and a carefully managed rehab plan aimed at turning this setback into the start of a true resurgence. The headline is simple but easily misunderstood. An engine freeze doesn't mean no work at all. Dall'Igna was blunt in putting that distinction on camera. Ducati has been combing the regulations for every permitted lever. That matters because while a wholesale redesign of core engine architecture may be off the table, manufacturers can still hunt for performance in permitted subsystems. For a team that has relied on marginal gains and package integration for years, the difference between a totally frozen platform and a partially open one is strategic gold. It changes where engineering budgets are spent, which suppliers are engaged, and how the test program is prioritized for Sepang and Buram. Anyway, there are still a lot of things that are free, like the fairing, and not all the engine is completely frozen. Ducati will push the envelope where the rules allow, and they expect competitors to be doing the same. Dall'Igna didn't just offer a legal technicality, he highlighted concrete targets. Exhaust and intake systems may look like plumbing to fans, but they rewrite how an engine breathes, how the torque curve behaves, and how heat and flow interact with aero and electronics. Changes in muffler routing, collector shape, intake length, or velocity stacks can shift where power arrives on the throttle, improve drivability out of slow corners, or free up aero designers by altering packaging constraints. When you combine subtle exhaust gains with frame and fairing tweaks, The net outcome can be a bike that feels stronger at mid-range or kinder on tires. Exactly the kinds of things that win races when outright peak horsepower is regulated. There are parts like the exhaust or the intake that it's possible to work on, so we've worked on these possibilities. In short, Ducati is chasing performance where the rulebook still permits it, and those small changes can have outsized effects once aero and electronics are tuned around them. Dall'Igna was candid about context. The season won't be a cakewalk. His nod to the competition underlines why the limited freedoms matter. When Aprilia, KTM, Honda, and even Yamaha are all refining packages, tiny legal gains can be the difference between leading a practice session and playing catch-up on race day. That is why the factory's timeline is aggressive: validate concepts in Sepang, then refine in Buram, and enter the tie opener with a clarified direction. The message is pragmatic urgency. Engineering creativity must be matched by execution speed, and the team knows its rivals won't wait. For sure it will be difficult because our competitors are working very hard. Ducati must turn permitted ideas into reliable, repeatable performance before the development window closes further and the season's momentum takes hold. Dall'Igna closed the loop with an operational reality. Ideas are cheap, validation is everything. Sepang becomes the crucible where wind tunnel concepts, intake/exhaust experiments, and aero permutations meet hot air, tire wear, and rider input. Only by running the parts on track, in the full thermodynamic, mechanical, and human environment, can Ducati decide what stays on the GP26 and what gets cut. That's why the team treats the shakedown and the following official test as decisive. They will gather telemetry, rider feedback, and comparative laps to filter the ideas into a final specification. Expect rapid iterations, targeted package changes between days, and conservative rollouts of only the most promising items. We have to check them, and only after the Sepang test can we understand which of these ideas could stay on the bike permanently for the season. In practice, that means Sepang won't be a parade. It's a deadline for decisions that will shape Ducati's opening salvo in 2026. Dall'Igna's message is part technical fact, part strategic positioning. Engine freezes change the game, but don't end it. Ducati's path is to exploit the permitted freedoms, intake, exhaust, fairing, and packaging, then use Sepang's hot seat time to choose which changes actually help the riders on track. With rivals sharpening their own packages, this incremental engineering chess match could determine whether the GP26 is merely promising on paper or actually race-winning on Sunday. Keep your eyes on the Sepang telemetry and the early season spec choices. They'll tell the real story. Thanks for watching ZNGP Today, and this is your MotoGP news update. And see you next time!